Another body, the first of 2026, has been recovered from a Houston waterway, once again sparking the conversation on why so many people are being found dead in the bayous. And yes, could there be a serial killer despite the adamant denials and warnings from authorities? We're going to talk about what we know of this new death and more, and this time we're bringing on a criminologist. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. You know, if you think the crime stories that I cover on Sidebar every day are scary, wait until you hear what's happening with your personal data online. Yeah, your name, your phone number, your address, it's all out there. It's easy for anybody to find. The good news, our sponsor, Incogni, they help you disappear online. They track down where your personal information is being exposed, like on search sites or old forum posts, and they demand its removal. When I signed up, they found over 50 databases with my information, and within days, it all started coming down. Setup takes minutes. You create an account, you authorize Incogni to do the rest, and with their new unlimited plans custom removals feature, you can submit specific links and a team of privacy experts will personally remove them. So if you care about protecting yourself online, and I hope that you do, take your privacy back with Incogni and use code SIDEBAR for 60% off an annual plan. We are literally just days from our last update, our last sidebar on this alarming amount of deaths in Houston, all these bodies that are being found in the bayous, which has ignited a conversation about a potential serial killer in the area. And what just happened? What just happened? The first body of 2026 has been pulled out of a Houston river. I hope it's the only one. But after over 30 bodies were found in the bayous last year, and you hear rumors of a bayou killer that authorities have been trying every which way to deny, we have this new body this year. What do we make of this? Now, according to The Independent, a man's body was located in the Buffalo Bayou at around 2 p.m. on Tuesday, January 6th. By the way, Buffalo Bayou, bodies have been found there. Last year, September 18th, a body was discovered in Buffalo Bayou. It was 63-year-old Arnulfo Alvarado. His cause of death was determined to be from methamphetamine toxicity and drowning. The manner of death was ruled accidental. But then you go to September 20th, and the body of 67-year-old Michael Rice was pulled from Buffalo Bayou. September 26th, Michaela Miller was found in Buffalo Bayou. And by the way, bodies were found in other bayous as well, like Greens and Brays, but just kind of give you a little context here. But going back to 2026, what do we know about this latest body, this latest death? And to be clear, this is reportedly the fourth body recovered from a Houston waterway within 15 days. Now, you have Lieutenant Larry Croson with the Houston Police Department, who revealed that a maintenance crew in the area was the one that found the body of this adult male, fully clothed, possibly wearing a gray jacket. KHOU 11 reporting authorities say there's no obvious signs of foul play, that the body didn't appear to be in the water for that long of a time. Lieutenant Croson adding, as always with these cases, we have our homicide investigators here, and they'll be conducting a follow-up investigation. The medical examiner will come here, and they'll do an autopsy to determine the man's cause of death. To be clear, the identity and cause and manner of death have not been revealed at the time of this broadcast. But I mentioned that authorities are trying to shut down this idea of a serial killer, right? So, for example, and we talked about this in our previous sidebar, you have Harris County District Attorney Sean Tier, who did an interview with NBC affiliate KPRC, said there is nothing, and I want to be crystal clear, to indicate that there is someone operating here as a serial killer. Last year, okay, after 5 bodies were recovered in just 5 days and a 6th just days later, you had this terrifying rapid cluster. You have different victims, different waterways. Obviously, it is leading to questions, a lot of online speculation that something was going on. So you had Houston Mayor John Whitmire, you had Houston Police Chief Noah Diaz. They held a press conference to try to downplay people's fears.
Let me say that again. There is no evidence that there's a serial killer loose on the streets of Houston. If there was, you would hear it from me first.
And Police Chief Diaz said, for us as an agency, rumors stir fear and anxiety in our communities. But maybe all of that hasn't worked, because according to ABC 13, late last month, after 3 bodies were found in bayous in a week's time, people seem to be skeptical. A man named Juan Sandoval, who was visiting Houston, told the outlet, "The math isn't mathing. I think there's a serial killer. I get Nevada's For You page now, and even in Nevada, they're talking about Buffalo Bayou. So it's that bad. It's reaching another state across state lines. Houston resident Eric Cortez said, there must be someone out there, no? Because it's ridiculous that so many people are dying in the bayou. I think it's unfortunate that they haven't found the person. According to KHOU 11, resident Juan Martinez said, come on, there must be a serial killer. Over 30-something bodies? No way. And this doesn't even take into account the amount of posts and comments on social media regarding the potential of a serial killer, too. Now, officially, even though you're seeing this many bodies, to give you an idea, reportedly 35 bodies found in 2024, 34 last year, the explanation has consistently pointed to broader, heartbreaking social issues. Houston's significant homeless population, mental health problems, substance abuse issues, the simple, dangerous geography of the bayous themselves. They are dangerous. And according to Cron, former Houston City Council member at large, Letitia Plummer, has addressed bayou safety, saying, everyone in my mind should have a part in this. All of us need to come together at a table and figure out what can be done. She added, in a lot of areas where there's a lot of jogging and walking, there should be emergency phones that someone could call immediately. Lighting should be a big conversation. And as we extend toward the East End, those were recommendations my office made last year. The Bayou Partnership has been open to those conversations. Now, she indicated this requires coordination between parties like the city, the Harris County Flood Control District, the Houston Parks Board, Buffalo Bayou Partnership. And before I even go further into this, before I bring an expert, a criminologist, to talk about all this, here's another fact I got to mention. According to data that was obtained by KPRC2 from the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office, nearly 40% of the roughly 200 bodies that were recovered from Houston area bayous since 2017 have an officially undetermined cause of death. So that means, seemingly, that after investigations and autopsies, forensic experts, authorities can't conclusively say whether this was an accident, whether this was a homicide, whether this was a case of self-harm. And to be clear, according to KHOU 11, with respect to the 34 bodies found last year in Houston in the bayous, only one was ruled a homicide, 9 were accidental, so drowning, toxic exposures, 19 remain undetermined deaths, 2 self-harm, and 3 still pending. So I want to bring on criminologist Dr. Debbie Goodman. She is the director and associate professor of the Criminal Justice Degree Program at St. Thomas University in Miami, Florida. She is a nationally recognized and accomplished author of academic crime books that are used worldwide. And she is our guest right now. So happy to have you, Doctor. Thanks for taking the time. Okay, so I want to start with this new one. What do you make of the finding of this new body in 2026?
Right. Well, as always, Jesse, thank you so much for having me on. This case really, I think we would have to use terms like crazy, wild, shocking. But here again lies the hesitation with the word or term serial killer. Because, Jesse, when we look back at the data analytics, when we last spoke, 2024, 30-something deaths. 2025, another 30 plus. And here we are with a death in 2026. But the question is, of all of these circumstances, which ones potentially of the nearly 70 are actually murder? So at the moment, we know of one, right? We know of Mr. John Morgan, 44 years old. The medical examiner did the report and the findings indicated blunt force trauma and internal bleeding. But when we look at the other circumstances, Jesse, so many of whom have been in the category of undetermined. They can't decide. So as terrible as all this is, and I think those are some of those talking points, right? It's terrible and it's tragic. But when we really narrow in on this and the levels of specificity, is it criminal? Because that would mean we have unlawful deaths. Now, I would still maintain that some of these other factors are at play here. Sociological issues, psychological issues. It is quite likely that among the nearly 70 victims, many of whom may have been in vulnerable positions. What does that mean? Perhaps the homeless citizens, the individuals who may have mental health difficulties, and those potentially with drug and alcohol issues, And so some of these deaths may be accidental, some may be as a result of self-induced harm, and others, of course, as we know, have been declared as undetermined. But can we really say they're criminal, an unlawful death? Questionable.
100% right. I want to get to that a little bit more. Just focusing, since all eyes now are on this new death, right? And I say new, look, the body was found in 2026. We don't know. Although this is interesting. So there's a couple of things we do seem to know about this body, right? They said, authorities, that it's possible the body was not in the water long. The body was fully clothed, found by a maintenance crew, by the way. Let's start right there. What does that tell you about the circumstances of this death, or at least how the body was found in that water? I don't know if deposited by someone else or was a result of something else, but somehow was found in that area. It tells us something, right?
Sure. Well, again, if we really look at the geography, Jesse, that equates to 2,500 miles of waterways. So, what do we know about water and body submersion? Well, again, it's difficult to really ascertain at what point or part of the geography did the body enter the water. Again, was it a slip and fall? Was somebody swimming and drowned? Were they intoxicated or with some type of narcotic in the system and didn't know what they were doing? But I do think what this speaks to in this totality of the Bayou area is really all eyes are on this case. So for the maintenance workers to have found the body, they did the right thing, they reported it. That's very important. Fully clothed, potentially more or less a body intact, would suggest the submersion in the water would not have been as lengthy as potentially the other 60 plus victims here. So we are still awaiting autopsy on the cause of death. Now, if and when, Jesse, we would have something along the lines that a medical examiner would point to blunt force trauma, strangulation, gunshot, a knife wound, then I would definitely be moving in a different direction and think, wow, we do have murders and we do have these unlawful deaths. But at the moment, with the exception of the one individual, Mr. Morgan, so much of this is undetermined.
When they say that this new body in 2026 showed no signs of foul play, is that because, how do they know that? Is that because on the on the surface there are no clear signs of, like, let's say you said blunt force trauma, gunshot wound, but you're saying that could potentially change, right?
Correct. That could potentially change, but you're 100% correct because we all know about the true crime community. So this is not fiction. This is fact. We are talking about fact-based circumstances of deaths. Yes, it's terrible. Yes, it's tragic, but the key finding here is the word criminal. Do we have a crime? I know that in our earlier conversations, some want to hit the panic button and say it's a serial murder, three, four more deaths at different locations. But when we have the serial killings, Jesse, we just look back at history, names that your viewers know: Dahmer, Bundy, Dennis Rader, Gacy, Ridgway. You see, law enforcement was quick to tell us that we have to be on high alert now because there is a serial killer. We have not been told that. So I still maintain we must trust the experts. They know what they're doing.
Right.
Findings, as you suggest at the moment, are not pointing to bruising, blunt force trauma, internal bleeding, gunshot, stabbing, strangulation. If those are the findings, I promise you I will say something differently.
Sure. And how long till a cause and manner of death is determined by the medical examiner? And I guess the second part to that is, given what you're saying, how long till those results are released to the public? And do they have to be careful about how they release it to the public, given all of the attention and speculation that is happening right now with respect to this new body I'm talking?
Oh, yes, indeed. That's an excellent consideration. Why? Because law enforcement, it's really not their job, right, Jesse, to tip the hat to the public and give, A to Z all of the details. Why? Because if we do potentially have a serial killer, they cannot afford to compromise the investigation. But to the other question about how long, it's generally a lengthy process. the ME's office. These are the credentialed medical doctors who have the scientific background to make these determinations. But generally speaking, we could still be waiting a couple of weeks on this one. I would imagine the fast track nature, because all of this, the
Right.
Bayou deaths have been in the spotlight now. We're going on year 2.
How can we be sure when authorities have determined that there was only one homicide? I mean, is there any reason to question those results? Any reason to say, and look, some are still pending, some are undetermined, but is there any reason to question that there was only one official determination of homicide?
In my opinion, Jesse, working through the years also with local, state, and federal authorities, I truly regard them as the experts. I think they're very careful, considerate, methodical, the I's dotted, the T's crossed. And so I believe them. I believe if of the near 70 potential victims, they are telling us that one is with certainty a murder, then I believe them. But again, if we may give potential consideration to just other sociological, psychological factors that I do think are relevant to this, the homeless citizens, those with
Right.
mental health compromise and drug and or alcohol related issues, that too becomes a deadly cocktail, especially surrounded by this 2,500 miles of waterway.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't seem to believe that there is evidence right now of one single person perpetrating all of these killings across Houston. And this is interesting because according to Cron, Andy Cahan, who's the director of victim services and advocacy for Crime Stoppers Houston, said, quote, "The booming true crime genre has played a tremendous role, particularly on social media. Rumors get driven by clicks, not evidence. A serial killer in a bayou gets more traction than saying none of these cases are related." And he added, and I thought this was really interesting, and I wanted your perspective, that basically in today's day and age, with technology, it is incredibly difficult for a serial killer to go on a crime spree the way that someone could have done this years ago. Surveillance footage, cell phone data. You agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I agree. I echo that sentiment. Why? Because when we go back the decades of the 80s, the 90s, and the Dahmers and the Bundys and Gacy and BTK and all of these names, we did not have, the cell phone in hand. We did not have the street cameras recording every move, the computers with the searches. So today and I can assure you of this because I check the crime data as a criminologist every single day to see where are we seeing the upticks, where are we seeing the declines. And serial murder, really, as we spoke last, in our modern day times, it's almost, a non-issue, right? Are there exceptions? Of course there are. But the greater concern, unfortunately, would be the mass murderers, those who are participating in 3 or more killings at one time, one location. It's different than the serial killer, 3 or more deaths over time, different locations.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, our understanding is from one of these cases, drowning seems to be the most common cause. The records also show, like you said, there is self-harm, there is a homicide, you might have substance abuse, overdoses, deaths that are linked to heart issues, maybe accidents where the bodies end up in the water. The thing about it is, according to reports from Houston Public Media, which reviewed data from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences, more than 200 bodies have been pulled from local bayous since 2017. And it was the last 2 years that account for the highest number on record. So 2024, 35 bodies were recovered. Last week's discoveries, you had 2025 has reached 34. So it nearly matched the record with the year before. And to put that in perspective, so in 2017, there were 20 deaths. The number fluctuated in the intervening years, began a significant climb around 2020. You're seeing a trend, but it's reaching these kind of levels. So it's not just a spike, Dr. Goodman, in social media attention. It's a spike in the actual data. So people will look at this and say, yeah, I understand you're talking about different socioeconomic factors. You're talking about the dangerousness of these bayous. But at the same time, why the uptick in just the last couple of years? And now you just find a body in 2026. What happened in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think the uptick, unfortunately, in the mental health status of individuals perhaps wanting to self-medicate through narcotic uses, through, the abuse of alcohol, through sheer depression and wanting to participate in self-harm. Now, is it possible, again, with the social media aspect to all of this? Again, we don't want the panic, we don't want the pandemonium, but could this area now become almost a magnet, let's say, for those who are potentially thinking about self, for those homeless residents who may be living at or near these waterways? Jesse, when all of this was going on, I was actually reminded about a case, and I know you covered it on Law and Crime, but a young man who was a spring breaker. He went to Tennessee with his fraternity friends for spring break for what was supposed to be a celebratory occasion, and the young man died. Now, the conversation, his name, by the way, Riley Strain. What happened to young Riley Strain, a 20-something-year-old? Well, what ended up being the finding was that there was alcohol ingestion in this part of Tennessee where he was, residing for the spring break, a lot of water, and sadly, tragically, he drowned. So I do think that among these near 70 deaths, many of which are drownings that may purely be accidental.
And by the way, something else I should mention. According to Click to Houston, Tim Miller of Texas EquiSearch, Equisearch, I might be mispronouncing it. This is a volunteer search organization. He's come out and said that he thinks it's possible there may be more bodies in vehicles that are underneath the water in the bayous. So it seems like the city of Houston's working on recovering these cars that may be at the bottom of the waterways. And, I don't know how difficult it'll be, Dr. Goodman, to not only recover the bodies, but also determine cause, manner of death. But if they start finding more bodies in vehicles that are submerged, I guess unless there's some evidence from the car to suggest foul play, it goes back to another idea. You might be dealing with accidents, right? Or floods or something of that nature where someone gets submerged. But if you start recovering more bodies from these cars, what are you going to be on the lookout for?
Right. Well, what I think is always important, we don't want to necessarily look at these things collectively, meaning the totality of the deaths. Each one truly, as we understand in the true crime space, has to be investigated individually because whether it's 60 deaths, 70, or you go back to the 2017 data of potentially 200, each one still is deserving of its own independent individual review. But I understand your point, and I agree that if there are to be more bodies found, I still don't think we're hitting that panic button yet until law enforcement officials tell us otherwise. And why? Because, Jesse, we know how important in our field we must have the evidence, we must
Right.
have the data that supports the finding. You see, that's why we're hearing about these undetermined deaths. We don't have the evidence, we don't have the data to support a serial killer finding.
And before I let you go, I just am curious about your reaction to authorities, what they have been saying. I mentioned it before, Harris County DA Sean Tier saying there's no evidence of a serial killer. He added, it's kind of a little known fact, but when you get into the bayous, it is very difficult to get out. When you combine that with someone that is high on some substance, someone that is intoxicated somehow, it makes it even more difficult. He did acknowledge, yes, there are times where we recover bodies that were placed in the bayou criminally, no question, but that is not something that is a regular occurrence. So you couple that with what the mayor said, what the police chief's comments have been, what authorities have said in general, trying to downplay the fear, trying to say, combat against this because speculation and rumors can have an adverse effect. What are your thoughts on how authorities have been handling this?
Well, based on what we know, we've read the reports, we've heard the press conferences and such, and I do believe that our law enforcement representatives want the public to be safe, to be secure, to have the information necessary to make good, prudent decisions about where they go, with whom they interact. You see, again, looking back to our historical framework of these other serial killers, law enforcement officials did share with the public how and why they feel that it's in a different caliber and a different classification, and they would have a due diligence to let the public know that, because again, the preservation of safety and security is so important. But that has to be balanced with the whole social media ideology of, like we spoke last time, in 60 seconds or less, people would read the headline, read the post, see the repost and the likes, and now a decision is made that truly may not be fact-based. So I think law enforcement is doing their best. I believe them. I still want to, very closely and carefully analyze what will be further shared.
Dr. Debbie Goodman, thank you so much. Appreciate it, as always.
Thank you, Jesse. My pleasure.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.